Let's start by talking about the two most popular platforms for mobile apps, iOS and Android. For those that hear about these terms all the time but don't know what they mean, you can think of them as mobile versions of Mac versus PC. These two platforms are the two types of operating systems that power the smartphones. iOS powers iPhones and iPads, and it also has a close relative named watchOS, which powers the Apple Watch. Android powers all the Samsung and HTC smartphones and tablets. And not only are these two platforms technically different, they also have very different users and business potentials. So how do you know which platform to build on first? Well, let me give you a short answer and explain why. If you want to make money and are on a tight budget, always build on iOS first. If you want to get a lot of users and have a large budget, then you might want to consider building on Android first. Remember when I said that these two platforms have different users? I don't just mean that iPhone users are the creative types, while Android users are the techie types. But what's important to know is that iPhones often have a higher price point. So then the users are much more accustomed to buying things off their iPhones, because many of them are used to buying songs on iTunes even before iPhones even launched. And here's some numbers to back it up. So when I was at Ticketmaster, we had twice the number of users on Android, but it was only bringing in half the sales. Now, not only did this mean that we made less money with our Android apps, we also spent more money building each app. And the reason for this is because it is incredibly hard to build an app that works for Android devices since there are so many of them running different versions of the operating system. For iOS, most of the users are running the latest version of the platform on a few devices. On Android, there are so many different devices running so many different versions that you'll have to spend a lot of time building and testing to make sure that your app is compatible on all of them. So to recap, when you're starting to build an app and want to make money, you always want to start with iOS. If your iOS is successful, you can always think about building on Android. Now, because iOS is where most of the money is, and it's a great platform for app creators, the examples I'm going to give throughout the course are going to be mostly for iOS apps. However, most of the principles that you'll learn will also apply if you want to design an Android app. Now, there are other tools which will let you build for multiple platforms at once. And these could include frameworks like Corona, Unity 3D, PhoneGap, Titanium, Xamarin, but I don't ever recommend going down this path because you're essentially using a third-party tool to duct tape a bunch of code together. And because you're using a third-party tool to build an app and not writing the code for the app directly, you won't get to take advantage of all the latest and greatest features of either platform. And your app will also have a significantly higher chance of breaking because these third-party tools have to play catch-up whenever Apple or Google introduces a new version of the operating system.